When it comes to policy creation and budget allocation, certain demographics often hold all the cards. In every election, the wealthy have access to critical information, while marginalized populations are left in the dark, excluded from the decision-making process. These policies affect us all, not just some, which raises the question, how do we bridge the information gap and finally amplify the voices of those who have been silenced for far too long?
Across the board, people do not understand how the state budget works and how public goods are funded. At MassBudget, we focus on low and middle-income families because it is this population, the one that is directly affected by how these funds disproportionately benefit the rich. When these communities do not know how the state funding is allocated, they cannot advocate for themselves in the state. Therefore, they cannot bring the programs that they need to their own communities.
Reversing this trend is MassBudget, a leading research and policy analysis center that leverages rigorous data collection to create partnerships that engage and empower communities. It's these connections that help to create and improve policies that achieve racial and economic equity.
So we look at the economic and public systems in Massachusetts and try and determine what works, who they favor, and how they could work better for everyone. Public budgets are exciting. They are the way that a community brings together the resources it needs to accomplish the kinds of things we can't do individually. A lot of the question is, how do particular policies expand or shrink the gap between rich and poor, whether they help or harm Black and brown communities in Massachusetts? And we want to be very specific about how this works. What are those kinds of causal connections that could be changed by a different kind of policy? And we'll recommend, which kinds of policies we think would work better. These are things that really matter.
We're able to provide partners, community groups, grassroots groups, along with coalitions with concrete data that they can use to push for critical policy change and also for funding that is vital to their communities. We did research recently on regional transit authorities that made buses fare-free. And our findings showed that the areas that were no longer charging fares had a dramatic increase in ridership, were able to improve services compared to the areas that were still charging fares. With our partners, we're able to take this research and advocate for increased funding for this wildly successful transportation program that's mainly serving low-income riders. It's helping them get to their work, it's helping them pick up kids from school, and it's also helping them to make sure that they can access medical appointments.
True democracy means that everyone is considered in the policies and budgets set forth, ensuring those who need it the most are prioritized. Because when everyone has a say, we all thrive together.
We've contributed to numerous policy successes that have improved the quality of life of people across Massachusetts. One example is we helped pass the Fair Share Amendment in Massachusetts that not only made our tax structure more equitable, but allowed us to make $2.3 billion in transformative investments in our education and transportation system.
We've been partners with MassBudget, and what is really key about the role that MassBudget plays in the grassroots organizing space is the critical data that they provide on some of the gaps in resources within communities that we serve. And having MassBudget put out data around education and transportation, we have used some of that data to win critical advocacy campaigns within this state.
So unfortunately, there are always new kinds of threats from privileged, powerful interests that want to press for policies that would expand inequality. And we need to be on top of things to be ready to talk about why those aren't good ideas.
The work here is never done. MassBudget is driven to continue advancing knowledge through research to arrive at decisions that shape our future.
We will not stop working until an organization like ours is no longer needed. That is, when people's demographics, their race, nationality, gender, age, socioeconomic status, or zip code when those demographics do not determine their future. And that is when true equity has been achieved.
To learn more, visit massbudget.org today.